menerima atau bertempatan menerima narasumber tamu dari Belanda yang akan sharing mengenai parlemen di Belanda. Sudah hadir bersama kita Dr. Remco Nehamelman dan Ibu Ilse van den Driesche yang akan menjadi narasumber utama. Sebelum memulai, izinkan saya untuk menyampaikan beberapa pengumuman terlebih dahulu terkait dengan webinar ini. Webinar ini akan diselenggarakan pukul 13.45, sudah dibuka sampai dengan sekitar 15.30 waktu Indonesia Barat, dengan 2 pembicara utama dan 1 chair of the session, yaitu Bapak Muhammad Nofrizal. Beliau adalah dosen senior di bidang studi hukum tata negara yang memiliki fokus riset memang di isu-isu parlemen atau lembaga perwakilan. Sesi webinar akan terbagi 2, ya. Pertama akan di-share oleh Bapak Nofrizal, kemudian dengan pembicara Dr. Remco dan Ibu Ilse. Pada para peserta, jika ingin bertanya, dipersilahkan nanti untuk bisa raise hand terlebih dahulu sebelum dipersilahkan oleh Bapak Moderator, atau bisa menyampaikan terlebih dahulu pertanyaannya di dalam kolom chat box. Silahkan, memang akan diskusinya dalam berbahasa Inggris, tapi jika mau menyampaikannya dalam bahasa Indonesia di dalam kolom chat box, tidak apa, nanti akan kami bantu untuk terjemahkan atau disampaikan kepada para peserta, kepala pembicara, mohon maaf. Baik, tanpa berpanjang kata lagi, kami serahkan sesinya langsung kepada Bapak Nofrizal. Silakan, Pak.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Abi. Professor Remco Nehamelman and Dr. Ilse van den Driesche, please allow me to speak in Bahasa first before we start with the session. Hadirin yang kami muliakan, ya, peserta webinar, saya akan membacakan secara cepat sebuah introduction insight dari saya sebagai chair of the session, kenapa alasan webinar ataupun kuliah umum kita laksanakan, ya. Kuliah yang kita laksanakan dalam rangka memperingati hari ulang tahun fakultas ataupun dies natalis, ya, anniversary dari Fakultas Hukum Universitas Indonesia yang ke-97, ya, yang diselenggarakan oleh bidang studi hukum tata negara. Ya, pembicara kita hari ini adalah Profesor Remco Nehamelman, Sekretaris Jenderal Senat atau Eerste Kamer atau Majelis Tinggi dari Parlemen Kerajaan Belanda, yang juga seorang guru besar hukum publik di Universitas Utrecht, Belanda. Dan pembicara kedua adalah Dr. Ilse van den Driesche, Permanent Representative, wakil tetap dari Senat atau Eerste Kamer atau Majelis Tinggi dari Parlemen Kerajaan Belanda untuk lembaga-lembaga di Uni Eropa. Kuliah umum ini dilatar belakangi oleh kondisi dunia yang semakin mengglobal, di mana ilmu hukum telah berkembang melalui batas-batas negara. Kita sering menemukan bahwa satu sistem hukum terkadang terinspirasi oleh sistem hukum lain di dunia, sehingga banyak akademisi hukum yang melakukan penelitian perbandingan hukum untuk memecahkan masalah hukum di tingkat lokal, nasional, bahkan regional. Perkembangan dunia hukum ini sangat penting tidak hanya untuk mahasiswa hukum, tetapi juga bagi para dosen dan ahli hukum lainnya untuk memiliki pemahaman yang lebih baik tentang berbagai sistem hukum di dunia. Dengan diadakannya kuliah umum ini diharapkan dapat memberikan wawasan baru kepada seluruh peserta tentang sistem hukum di Belanda dan Uni Eropa, khususnya dalam hal hukum tata negara, yaitu mengenai hubungan antara parlemen nasional negara-negara anggota Uni Eropa dan parlemen Uni Eropa. Dari perkuliahan umum ini dengan tema sebagaimana kita sudah ketahui sebagai lessons learned bagi Indonesia, boleh jadi ada beberapa best practices yang dapat dipelajari dan bahkan mungkin diadopsi oleh Indonesia dalam rangka meningkatkan kualitas demokrasi di tanah air. Misalnya dalam rangka memperkuat fungsi perwakilan daerah dalam sistem atau proses pembentukan hukum nasional, agar hukum atau undang-undang yang dibuat di tingkat nasional benar-benar dapat mewujudkan aspirasi dan melindungi kepentingan rakyat dari sisi kepentingan yang bersifat kedaerahan atau territorial representations. Dalam hal konteksnya, dengan sistem ketatanegaraan di Indonesia, hal yang ingin kita ambil pelajarannya dari sistem yang berlaku di Belanda dan Uni Eropa sebagai contoh adalah dalam kaitan dengan kurang terlibatnya DPD dan juga DPRD secara formal struktural dalam proses pembuatan undang-undang di tingkat nasional. Dalam proses legislasi dari suatu politi yang saya maksud di sini adalah negara bagian, negara ataupun organisasi negara-negara yang menganut prinsip demokrasi dan rule of law, partisipasi dari seluruh pemangku kepentingan seyogyanya menjadi syarat mutlak yang harus dipenuhi. Selain keterlibatan rakyat, baik secara langsung ataupun tidak langsung melalui wakil rakyat di parlemen, bentuk partisipasi lainnya yang sangat dibutuhkan adalah peranan dan keterlibatan pemerintahan di tingkat lokal yang merupakan subsistem ataupun yang berkedudukan subordinat terhadap tingkat pemerintahan yang lebih tinggi atau bersifat preeminent. Dalam sistem ketatanegaraan Indonesia saat ini, terlepas dari persoalan sistem pemerintahan dan bentuk negara yang dianut, konstitusi negara kita, Undang-Undang Dasar Negara Republik Indonesia 1945 kurang memberikan ruang bagi partisipasi pemerintahan lokal, meskipun Indonesia sudah memiliki DPD. Hal ini antara lain disebabkan oleh dua hal yang utama, yaitu pertama karena DPD tidak terlibat dalam pengambilan keputusan akhir atau dalam tahap persetujuan undang-undang. Kedua, karena tidak adanya hubungan kerja yang bersifat langsung, nyata, terstruktur, sistematis, dan saling mempengaruhi antara DPD dengan unsur-unsur pemerintahan provinsi, khususnya DPRD provinsi. Kuliah umum ini bertujuan untuk memberikan contoh tentang model partisipasi dan keterlibatan pemerintahan lokal yang telah berhasil dilakukan oleh bangsa-bangsa lain yang mungkin saja dapat diadopsi oleh Indonesia guna meningkatkan kualitas demokrasi dan legitimasi produk legislasinya atau produk undang-undang. Salah satu contoh yang sering diambil untuk menggambarkan kesempurnaan dari kuatnya peranan territorial representation dalam satu sistem parlemen bikameral atau yang biasa kita kenal dengan sebutan strong bicameral adalah sistem yang diambil oleh Amerika Serikat. Ya. Selain Amerika, contoh lainnya adalah model yang dianut oleh Jerman, dan kebetulan hari ini kita mengundang pembicara dari Belanda yang juga merupakan negara bagian dari Uni Eropa. Nah, nanti dalam kuliah yang akan disampaikan oleh Profesor Remco Nehmelman dan Dr. Ilse van den Driesche, kita akan tahu kenapa lebih detail kenapa kuliah ini kita angkat. Ya, demikian sedikit pendahuluan dari saya. Nanti lengkapnya akan saya posting. Apa yang saya bacakan ini lebih jauh lagi ada sekitar 4 halaman di dalam ruang chat untuk bisa kita bahas mungkin setelah sesi Remco dan Ilse kalau sudah selesai nanti. Baiklah, sekarang kita lanjutkan akan membuka acara ini secara resmi ya. Oke. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning to our honorable speakers in the Netherlands and good afternoon to our audience in Indonesia. Welcome to the Studium Generale or public lecture on the Dutch Parliament and its relations to the Parliament of the European Union as a part of the celebration of the 97th anniversary of the Faculty of Law of Universitas Indonesia. On behalf of the Department of Constitutional Law of the Faculty of Law of Universitas Indonesia, I would like to pay our high gratitude first to both of our speakers, Professor Remco Nehmelman, the Secretary General of the Senate or Eerste Kamer of the Parliament of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, who is also a professor of institutional law at Utrecht University, the biggest university of the country, as well as to Dr. Ilse van den Driesche, the permanent representative of the Senate or Eerste Kamer of the Parliament of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to the EU institutions. Thank you for your kindness to teach at our university today and for sharing your knowledge to Indonesian people. Second, our appreciation also goes to the deans and vice deans of the Faculty of Law of Universitas Indonesia for your support for this event. And last but not least, we would also like to thank all the participants of this public lecture. Honorable speakers and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, before we start our lecture sessions, on behalf of the Dean of the Faculty of Law of Universitas Indonesia, Professor Dr. Andri Gunawan Wibisana, as the Vice Dean for Academic Affairs, will give his welcoming remarks to the speakers and audience. Professor Wibisana, you are kindly requested to deliver your speech.
Thank you, Pak Nofrizal. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon for everyone in Indonesia and good morning to our honorable guests in the Netherlands. Distinguished speakers, Professor Dr. Remco Nehmelman and Dr. Ilse van den Driesche, distinguished colleagues, lecturers and professors, and all distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to congratulate to the Constitutional Law Department of Faculty of Law Universitas Indonesia, which organizes this public lecture as one of the event series for the celebration of the 97th anniversary or this Natalis of the Faculty of Law Universitas Indonesia. We are very honored to have this lecture with our two honorable guest speakers. The first one is Professor Dr. Remco Nehnelman, Secretary General of the Senate, Eerste Kamer of the Parliament of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. He is also Professor of Public International Law at Utrecht University, the Netherlands. And the second one is Dr. Ilse van den Driessen, the permanent representative of the Eerste Kamer of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to the European Union institution. Our two speakers will deliver insightful lecture about the Dutch Parliament and its relation to the EU Parliament. For Professor Nehnelman and Dr. van den Driessen, on behalf of the Dean and all faculty members of the Faculty of Law Universitas Indonesia, I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation for your kindness to accept our invitation and for your kind willingness to share your knowledge and experience to Indonesian people. In this globalized world, legal science has grown beyond national border. We often discover that one legal system is sometimes inspired by another legal system. As a scholar, I see there are plenty of lessons and inspiration to learn from other legal systems for the development of our own national legal system. Therefore, in most of our research, we often conduct comparative research to solve local or national legal issues. In this regard, I would like to refer to Sandy Steele, who wrote that a comparative study could provide three benefits. First, it allows one legal system to learn from another. Second, it allows a jurisdiction to know alternatives that are better applied in other jurisdictions. And third, it could help a researcher achieve the so-called reflexive equilibrium, by which a researcher find more consistent opinions, explanation, or even understanding about certain legal problems. Through this reflexive equilibrium, I believe that by conducting a comparative study, one can learn and know better one's own legal system. Hopefully, this public lecture with the topic on the Dutch Parliament and its relations to the EU Parliament will give all participants new insights about the legal system in the Netherlands and the European Union, especially the relation between national parliament of the EU member states and the European Parliament. Of course, after this lecture, I hope that collaboration between the Faculty of Law Universitas Indonesia and Utrecht Law School could be furthered and enhanced in many possible ways. Once again, I would like to thank all professors and lecturers of Constitutional Department for participating in our Des Natalis celebration by conducting this public lecture. Last but not least, thank you to all participants from across Indonesia for joining this event. I wish you all a very pleasant lecture and discussion. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Andri Lubisana. And ladies and gentlemen, since Professor Remco Nehnelman is already present in our Zoom room now, and because he has a very limited time to be with us, where he must leave at 10 a.m. at Dutch time or 3 p.m. at Western Indonesian time, I decided not to read out his CV, but I will post it in the chat room of our Zoom platform. And without further ado, I will cordially invite Professor Nehnelman to start his lecture, who will explain about the Senate or Eerste Kamer of the Parliament of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And the PowerPoint slides will be operated by our colleague, Mr. Adioso. Professor Nehnelman, during your lecture, you can simply give your instruction at every time you want to move to the next slide. And now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nofrizal. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Very clear.
Okay, thank you. The first slide, there is a S missing on after the Netherlands, so that I hope that's the only fault I have made today. So, but there has to be an S outside. It's also the Netherlands. It's also so very sorry for that. But thank you very much to be here together with my colleague. She's sitting next to me, Mrs. Ilse van der Driessen. We know each other very well, not only in this, not only in the secretary where I'm now working, but also in former times, because we were both very fond of constitutional law. So first of all, congratulations on your Dies Natalis, and thank you very much that we may give a little present today, a little present in the form of a presentation to you today. I'm so sorry, but I have to leave in 1 hour time, because this afternoon I'm going together with the Speaker of the Senate to Rome, Italy, and probably I will see there too the Speaker of your house, of maybe both houses, because there is a meeting of the P20. It's a satellite meeting of the G20, and the Netherlands was invited by the Italians. And well, the 20 biggest economy of the world are invited in Rome to discuss it with each other, certain issues. So I have to leave for that reason this afternoon. Nevertheless, I want to try to give you a slight overview what's happening here in the Netherlands. My background is very shortly, Isal already stated that my CV will be sent to you, or can be seen. I was a law professor. I'm still a law professor in Utrecht University. I wrote my PhD over there by the rector of Magnificus. It's Professor Kummeling, also very known to you, Isal. And I was a law professor for the last six years, and since 2018, I have a fully job as a Secretary General of the Senate of the Netherlands. The Secretary General is the highest civil servant in this institution. It's called in the Netherlands the Eerste Kamer, but globally it's mentioned as the Senate of the Netherlands. I know Isal very well, because together with Henk Kummeling, the rector, you're writing now still a PhD together with us, Isal. So I hope in the few next month or next year I can see the full manuscript, and I'm fully I've a lot of satisfaction until now in your process. So the next slide, please, the first slide. I want to introduce you a little bit, if you do not know how the system in the Netherlands on the legislative process is working. And Ilse will take up after me in how the relations are with Brussels, with the European Union, and how Parliament can be involved in lawmaking in the EU lawmaking process. But I'm telling you now something which is here in the Netherlands since 1815. So it dates back to more than 200 years ago, when the Kingdom of the Netherlands was invested in the world. And I would like to first start with how the legislative process in the Netherlands is working, so how a law is made. And there you will see what the position of the Senate, or the Eerste Kamer in the Netherlands, is. I think it's much the same in your country. All the bills, so proposal of a law, are drafted at the departments. We have about 14 departments now on all kind of issues, on education, health, a general department where the Prime Minister is residing, and on all those departments, bills are made to see if a problem in society can be dealt with by making a new law. And there you see a small picture of the Council of Ministers. As we speak, we're now in formation. So we had elections in March this year, and the making of a new cabinet is taking very long, because political parties, are not in row, but sometimes in conflict in how the new government should be formed. And we all hope now in the Netherlands that in a few weeks or few months, but I hope a few weeks, we have a new government with new ministers in the Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers is, well, most of the time situated at the Binnenhof. We were also situated at the Binnenhof, but a few weeks ago we moved to another building in The Hague because the Binnenhof complex, in which the second chamber, the first chamber, so we and the president, the prime minister is seated, will have to leave over there because the Binnenhof will be totally reconstructed. It has been too late, too long, that there was no any improvement over there. But still, the prime minister is sitting over there for a few months, and there, that room, this very famous room, it's called the Trêvezaal, the seat of peace, it's also called. And the prime minister with his council of ministers is over there each Friday morning and discussing all bills and all matters that concerns the Netherlands. If a bill is made by civil servants and the minister is ready to discuss it in the Council of Ministers, the Council of Ministers approves, then it goes to the Council of State, the highest advisory body in the Netherlands. It's also situated very close by of the Senate, but also all buildings are very close by here in The Hague. And the Council of State are 15 or 16 members, which are appointed by the King and ministers, who give the highest advice to, as well to the Council of Ministers, as to the both chambers of Parliament, so to the second House and the first chamber, and to Parliament and the Council of Ministers. And they can say it's a good bill or it's a bad bill, etc. But they do not have any veto right, etc. The ministers can decide to go to Parliament if they want to. Sorry, I have to take a little bit of water. If the Council of State is passed, then it goes to the second, the lower house of the Netherlands. And there you're seeing the room or the seat of Parliament of the lower house, the second chamber, the House of Representatives. It was at the Binnenhof as well, as I told you, but they also moved a few weeks ago to another place next to the central station in The Hague. Although the plenary, the meeting hall is totally copied on a smaller base at other building. So they did it quite well. It was a good job of the housing minister who was responsible to that, of the moving of Parliament. If the lower house and the House of Representatives agrees with the bill, and they have certain powers to amend it, I will discuss it later. That's the next slide, please. Then it goes up to us, and there you see our beautiful room at the Binnenhof, which we had, and it's now renovated, and we hope to go back over there in 3 or 4 years' time. We have now a beautiful building as well. It's not very far away from the Binnenhof, but nevertheless, the room where we would have meetings for before COVID, so until February 2020, it dates back until the 17th century. It's a very old plenary room, and I was told it was the oldest plenary room in the world that is still in office. So then it goes to us in the Senate, and it's tabled and discussed. And if all goes well, it is adopted in the Senate. I will tell you a little bit later in the next slide. Please wait, because after our president has signed, and the Senate has approved the bill which was discussed, then it goes to the King's office, and the bill has to be signed by the King and co-signed by a minister. Both are needed to that the bill will become an act of Parliament. And then it's officially published in the Staatsblad, in the Gazette, the official Gazette of the Netherlands. And then, well, the law will go, the bill will go to an act of Parliament and will be enforced. So that's the formal process of making a law in the Netherlands. Both houses are needed, but also the government is needed. And those three institutions, so government and the two parliaments, are necessary to make a bill to a law. It's also very typical of the Netherlands. The King is in part of the government, so the ministers, together with the King, in our constitution is called the government. So in other countries, sometimes the king has only protocol powers, etc. But in the Netherlands, he hasn't. He's very much needed into the lawmaking process, and you see there a picture of him signing a document. Next slide, please. Well, there you see the House versus the Senate. What are the differences? And there are a lot of differences in both houses. There you see the old pictures of the institutions, all situated here in the center of The Hague. It's called the complex of the Binnenhof, a very new building of the second chamber. Nevertheless, it's also renovated, dates back now since 1994. Our building over there at the right, at the Binnenhof Center itself, it dates back until the 12th century, so very, very old. And even the royal family lived there in the medieval time, so that's a long time ago, and a renovation was very much needed in our house. The House of Representatives, the Tweede Kamer it's called in Dutch, has 150 members, and they are full-time politicians. And are also directly elected by the populations of the Netherlands, by people who are older than 18 and have the Dutch citizenship. They may vote for the second chamber. The second chamber has a full right of veto, so they can say in first instance this bill is not okay, and then well, it's over and out for a bill. And also they have, of course, the right to resign a minister if they don't have the confidence of a minister who is seated over there. And they have two powerful instruments to make law itself or amend law, amend a bill, for instance. They have the right of initiative, and they have also a right of amendment. So a majority can amend a bill that is made by the government, but also each member of parliament of the second chamber has the right of initiative. It's written down in our constitution, and each member of parliament can initiate, can write itself a bill, and which goes then also to the second chamber and the first chamber. And that's not in our house, so I go now to the Senate, the first chamber, the Eerste Kamer. It dates back until 1815. After Napoleon lost the Battle of Waterloo, the Allied forces over there, Britain, France, and Germany, but especially, of course, Britain, and invested a Senate in the Netherlands, and it is called then the Eerste Kamer since 1815, and they have 75 members. So they until the 50s, 1950s, they had 50 members, and the lower house had 100 members. But since 1946, we have 150 members in the lower house and 75 members in the upper house. They are part-time politicians. We only meet once every week at Tuesday, and every bill is also passed in our house. But they are part-time politicians. Most of the members do have a different job in society, a professor or a member of a large company, or they are already they already have pension. All is possible, but they are part-time politicians. No, not full-time politicians like in the lower house. And also very specific is that they are not elected directly, but indirectly. So through via provincial councils. We have 12 provincials in the Netherlands, and they together elect the Senate. So people in the Netherlands can vote for the members of delegates of the provincial councils, but after they are elected, they elect the Senate in the Netherlands, and that dates back to 1848, so a very long time ago. And it's very niche, but since a few years, also 3 islands in the Caribbean still have relations over there, and they also are, well, you can say special municipalities, but they also have the right to vote for these municipalities delegates to vote for members of the Senate. The Senate, that's very typical and also very unique, I think, in the world, but they have a full right of veto, so they can fully resign and they do not have any obligation to any other institution, and they can say, sorry, but this bill will not pass this Senate. It doesn't often happen, but nevertheless, the sword is there, and they can say, sorry, government, or sorry, second chamber, but this bill will not pass this house, and then it's over and out. And that's a very, well, harsh and firm power, of course, especially if you see that they do not have the right of initiative, but also no right of amendment. So they have to do with what the government and the second chamber has given to the Senate, and then they have to approve or not approve to a certain bill which is in the House at that moment. Next slide, please. Of course, through the less powers the Senate has, the democratic legitimacy of the Senate is weaker. And it's also, which I showed you a few minutes ago, they are indirectly elected. And so in the Netherlands, it is said that the Senate is weaker than the House of Representatives. But in the end, of course, I showed you as well that the Senate has a right to veto. So that's a firm power that they can use if they want to. They don't use it very often, but nevertheless, it's over there. Yet it has the final say, as I stated on this slide, on all bills, and also very important, of course, including budget bills, which are now both presented in the House at the September. It's the opening of Parliament, and the government shows its bills, budget bills for the next year, and then they are discussed as we speak now in both houses. So the question might be with people outside, what are you doing then? If you have only the right to veto, you cannot amend or initiate, what do you focus on? Well, what our senators have approved and see what's happening over there, they're focusing on quality of legislation. And they do that by three principles: lawfulness, practicability, and enforceability. So lawfulness, especially on the Constitution, treaties, human rights, are the new bill. Is it the new bill of? Can it be? Is it not contrary to the Constitution or any treaty or any human rights? The Senate has to look over that to do so. And also, is it practical enough? So for the new society and the people who have to enforce see if the new bill is feasible and is it realistic. So this gives a solution to the societal problem. That's the question over there. And also, is it enforceable? It's the same question, of a little bit different question, but also if you can make a law or a bill which cannot be enforced because due to you have to need more police or military or whatever, then the new law cannot be enforced, and the Senate has to veto it. But as I told you before, it doesn't happen a lot. I think 200 bills are passed each year this house, and if it's one each year, then that's a high number. So very less the veto right is used. But they are looking over those three issues, and they ask questions to the government if they are lawfulness, practicability, and enforceability. You might ask the question, what kind of institute is it then in the lawmaking process? Is it a court or scientific institute? No, I put it over here, and everybody agrees in the Netherlands, it's a political body. And especially if I tell you, and that's also on the next slide, which you will see in a few moments, the government since 2010, and presiding under Prime Minister Rutte, does not have a majority in the Senate. They have a majority in the lower house, in the House of Representatives, second chamber, but not in the Senate. And that because both houses are needed, and ministers do need to pass a bill to both houses. There's a political issue, a very strong political issue in the Senate as well, because the government knows that they do need the opposition to pass a bill in the House of us. And that gives a very high political dimension to our institute. And of course, there are friends in both houses, so senators are connected also with members of the House of Representatives, and they can agree, of course, political agreements. How they will vote in both houses, and if you know that the opposition is needed, well, that's a tricky business for the government. So next slide, please. And what kind of scrutiny is used by the Senate? What's the toolkit of our senators, our 75 members? They do a thorough written preparation of bills by Senate committees. So it's not yet the plenary, but it all starts in our house. Where if a bill passes the second chamber, it comes up to us. Then it goes to committees, and most of the time a written preparation is made in the Senate by these committees. And also, although they do not have the right of amendment, there is an instrument which is made through history, and it's called the novella. And the senators in majority can ask ministers, sorry, but this part of the new bill is not okay, is not correct, and you have to take it out or amend it, or you have to do that yourself, minister. Go back to the second chamber and come back again when you've done that, and then we will see if the new bill can be passed through our house. And that's called the novella, but it's not a instrument which is in the toolkit of the Senate itself. It is a pressure, political pressure by the Senate through a minister saying, sorry, but you have to amend the bill on this part, and then we will vote on the new bill after you have passed the lower house. And there's also a toolkit of a tool of urge the government to make commitments. Evaluations, for instance, an entry into force of provisions. But senators can ask for, well, please, we might pass, we will agree with this new bill you have introduced, Minister. But there has to be an evaluation in a few months or a few years, and you have to come back to this house to show it again. And also, which is very much happening in last years, is the so-called, and I think that's also in your parliament, motions. And they can even be used for asking for new legislation. So the majority motion has to also be approved by the majority of the Senate. But motions can even be, well, can ask to anything to the government also in the end, making new legislation. And even the question, that's a tricky question, constitutional question, if a motion with a vote of no confidence to the government or to a certain minister can be used. It doesn't happen a lot. Some people are also saying it's not up to the Senate to resign a minister, that's only up to the lower house. But nevertheless, I think it's a political institute, and if they want to, they can even sack a minister by a motion of no confidence. It has not ever happened in the 200 years, but sometimes you see a very strict or firm motion which can be interpreted like a motion of no confidence. Well, if the House gives its veto, a rejection, then it's game over and the bill cannot be sent back to the House. So then it's totally over, and the government or the member of the lower house which initiated a new bill has to go all over again, or take its loss, and then it's all over. And he didn't do a job very well in Parliament at that moment. So the last slide, and there's a lot of time then I already stated to you, Isal, for questions, but please do them. What are the developments? 2012, that's the second Rutte government. There's no majority anymore in the upper house with us. So no majority since I think 10 years time already, and probably as we see now they want to continue with the current coalition in the formation, and then they will also not have enough seats in our house. You have to need 38 seats for a majority of the 75, and on the last bullet you see that there is only a coalition in the Senate of 32 seats. There will be new elections in 2023, so the new government has to wait and see if the formatted government, which is now happening, will have a majority in the Senate. It's much easier, of course, if you have the majority in both houses. So on the other side, it's very good for dualism, a dualistic system between government and parliament. So because ad hoc coalitions with other parliamentary parties, with the opposition, is needed now. So the government knows that, and if they want to propose a bill for problem solving of society, then in both houses the majority is needed. And as they do not have the majority in the Senate, they need the opposition party, one or two oppositional parties who want something back for that, of course, in political money. Well, there were complaints in 2014 from VVD, so the biggest political party in the Netherlands, Volkspartij voor Vrijheid en Democratie, People's Party of Democracy, Freedom and Democracy, and even the political party of Mr. Rutte, the Prime Minister. And there were complaints in the leader of both houses that it doesn't work anymore. They stated that you should have a majority, and why do we need the Senate anymore? And there were issues happening also on the whole Parliament, but especially on the House of we have the Senate. And a special Senate committee on Senate procedures was initiated. Can it be changed? Can it be more easy for government, etc.? Are there special issues that can be amended in the House itself on procedures? And it resolved into slight minor changements, but not that much. And the government invested a state committee on the future of the parliamentary democracy. It delivered its conclusions a few months later, but until now, not any conclusion which was made in that state committee has passed both houses. So there is still deadlock that's a little bit negative, but still is the same as we did 200 years ago. So the veto right is there. There's no chamber of conflict or rule of conflict if both houses have any total different point of view on a certain bill. We do not have that in the Netherlands. Most of democracies in Europe do have that. For instance, in Britain, if the House of Commons does not agree with the House of Lords, then there is a rule of conflict since 1911, and we do not have that in the Netherlands. So there might be some issues over there, but I have to see if there will be some amendments. So where are we now? 2019, 2021. Senate is now with 15 groups, so parliamentary parties, you can say. One group was elected in 2019, the biggest one, 12 seats, but it's split into 3 groups. So from 13 we went up to 15 groups. So that was quite unique in our house, and they have the full every power that all fractions or groups have. Those new splitters do also have the same powers and the same the same position in the Senate as the other ones. So the government Rutte doesn't still now have majority in the Senate, and if, as I told you, so probably the next government, if the current seated coalition will continue by 4 political parties, they have 32 seats in this house, and they are looking, of course, for 76 or more in the lower house. That they will have probably the new coalition, but the Senate will still have is still not enough to pass any bill to in our house. So it's very common now in the Netherlands that the government does not have the majority in both houses. I will leave it up to there. So there's a lot of discussion room. I hope there are any questions, or it might be that everything was clear, of course. So thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much for your lecture, Professor Remco Nijmelman. And now to the audience, you can raise any question to Professor Ramkon and Melman, because he still has about half an hour more to be with us here. You can type your question in the chat room, or you can ask in Indonesian language. I will translate it for Professor. So
if
if
there are no questions, Isal, I have questions on the Indonesian parliament.
yeah, okay, I will try to answer. Okay, there is one question here from Abu Yusuf. Yeah, Professor Remco, could you please elaborate more what you mean by part-time politicians in previous slide related to the Senate? That was the first question, because there's still only one question. I think you can answer it correctly.
Shall I try to give an answer? And then, well, it's the principle behind it is that they say parliamentarians should also have a background in society. So they, if they were former mayor or still mayor, or a judge, or a member of, they were for instance, in society or business, for instance, or a professor, etc., then it's also very much needed in politics to oversee lawmaking. So that's the issue. There is a lot of criticism on that system, because international organizations like the Council of Europe are very close watching us on that point, because they are saying there is too much conflict between, if you are also, for instance, a professor or a rector magnificus, we have one in our house, and how will he or she vote then if, for instance, the education budget is on the table? So there's a lot of discussion on that issue, and senators do know that are on a close watch by journalists. But on the other hand or other side, you can say it's very good that 75 people do have another background and do see things from other point of view, and can bring in their knowledge, which they take back from their other profession. But it's a good question, because, as I stated, we're closely watched on that point by integrity. Is it, and what are your side jobs or your professions, and do they have any conflict as a parliamentarian in the Senate? And so, yeah, we have certain provisions now on that, but it's taking step by step. And the international organization in Strasbourg, the Council of Europe, is not always that satisfied on the steps we are making. You see also in the lower house that integrity of parliamentarians is a very high level topic, and due to the fact that we have part-time politicians, so only 1 day a week they are a senator, well, of course 24/7, but only doing their profession as a senator one day a week. Yeah, there can be conflicts between the main profession and to be a member of the Dutch Parliament. I hope that gives some direction on answering the question.
Okay, I hope the answer to Abu Yusuf. Yeah, Abu Yusuf already heard the answer very well from Professor Remco. And then if you still have another question, because we see here the participants about 47, including 3 of us.
Yeah. Maybe some a little bit background also on the first question.
Yeah, okay.
Of course, from the Trias Politica, very well known, I think, also in your country, the Montesquieu idea of the 3 branches of government, the executive, legislative, and the judiciary branch. You have to be very careful not to be in conflict in that members of political groups are also a judge, for instance. It was possible, and it's still, yeah, it was possible in the Netherlands in the Senate to be a judge and a parliamentarian, but it's now forbidden. So it's by a new act of parliament. It's not any it's incompatibility of powers. And there are still, but I have to be careful as a Secretary General, but sometimes I think it's very tricky also to be a mayor in office and also be a member of Parliament, because you are then a member of the executive branch and also a member of the legislative branch. But on these issues, there's still no any lawmaking, etc. But on these issues, also the international, especially the Council of Europe, the international group of 47 members, and they are saying on the integrity part, you have to be very careful not to be giving conflicts between the three branches of government.
Yeah. Okay. So it means the provincial council, they elect the candidates from public, yeah, or also some of them from the provincial council as well.
No. They are only. It's a new list of candidates which the delegates of the provincial provincial states, they call provincial the delegates of the provinces, who elect a new list of course of their political friends into the Senate. They are not representative of the provincials.
Yeah, so it means they don't have double job as a legislature. Okay.
Well, you see that, of course, we had members of, for instance, in Germany. There you see in the upper house, the Bundesrat, their first chamber. Those elected members are, of course, also seated in the Bundesländer, in the provinces of the German Länder itself. But it's not happening in the Netherlands.
Okay.
It's not. You can be a member of the provincial states and also a member of the Senate, but that's a coincidence. So it's not forbidden. It's not an incompatibility, but it's not because we are a unitary state like you, like Indonesia. But there's no any connection between the provinces and the Senate. They are not representative of the decentralization in the Netherlands. They are fully for the unitary state in office.
Oh, but it is possible to have double jobs.
Yeah, it's possible. That's also a discussion in the Netherlands now. We have certain senators who are member of a municipality council or a provincial council, and also on the first chamber. That's not forbidden. But some political parties are saying that's, yeah, you have to be very careful about it. But our Minister of the Home Interior is not taking any steps to amend it. They are saying it's also good to know what's happening in the decentralized bodies. But on the other hand, you can also say you are a unitary state, then it might be a conflict between, with professions which you have in the political landscape.
Okay. But has it happened before?
It happens now a lot, yeah, indeed, especially on the new political parties. There are a few of them are also members of the Municipality Council of Amsterdam, the provincial delegates of north of Holland. It's a province in the Netherlands, and also a member of the Senate. We have a few of them in the House now. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. We don't have any more questions in the chat room, but the audience, you can also ask directly, orally, your question. You can raise hand or just speak directly, because our participants are not so many. I think it's under 50, so still possible for you to raise questions directly.
Yeah, I see some questions is all in the chat room.
Can I ask a question directly, or should I? Oh, okay, chat room first then.
Oh yeah, It's from Kurata Ayuni. She is also a member of Constitutional Department lecturers team. Yeah. She would like to ask if the Prime Minister proposed a draft and Parliament rejected, is that any impact with the legitimacy of the Prime Minister? Can it be seen as low support for Prime Minister? That was the question.
It's a good question. First of all, the Prime Minister does not take any much action on initiating bills. It's only on the most of the time it's the ministers in the Council of Ministers who do themselves initiate the bill on a certain societal question. But for instance, it's a very tricky and very delicate issue. For instance, the budget on the bill of the monarchy, so the kingdom, and for the king, there the prime minister is in charge, and there's also a small amount of money, of course, on the budget, which is for the king and the royal house. And there, some political parties can be very nasty for the prime minister to say, why is it necessary? Shouldn't we be a republic? And why is it necessary that the king has, etc., etc.? And some, and also journalists are very much fond of these issues, and then, well, it can be sometimes an issue in society. But up till now, our prime minister, and I have to be careful as well, is very clever and very political clever to go through Parliament, and knows exactly how to pass a bill into and even a budget bill on the monarchy in both houses. So there's not much. It's more policy. He is questioned by Parliament, especially with the House of Representatives. But well, he's political clever man. Although he shouldn't be in office 10 years now. So if he wasn't. But of course, if it happens, then that will be not good for his reputation. Isal, I see also a question by Mr. and Mrs. Hudson Hutapea about a solution. Yeah, that's a good question as well. And I told you a little bit about it, but there is no constitutional rule in our constitution, or written or unwritten, which gives any proceedings if both houses do not agree. So that's a political game, game in the Netherlands. How if a bill will pass both houses, and of course there are voices also in constitutional scientific professors, of course, who are saying there should be a provision between both houses, but up till now it never happened. So, and on the other hand, you can say a lot of bills are passed through the Senate, and all political issues are already taken care of in beforehand. So the State Committee a few years ago were saying there should be proceedings between both houses, and the Senate shouldn't have any on certain issues, can take its own decision of sending a bill back to the House of Representatives and leave it up to there. So they can say, sorry, but this issue will not work, but we do not decide, we send it back to the House of Representatives and they have to take care of it. But that is not, this idea has not been taken granted, is not granted by the seated senators now. They don't like it if they are diminished in their powers of veto. Yeah, so of course, it's very hard in the Netherlands also to change the constitution, very harsh. Yeah, most of the constitution, but in the Netherlands, it's very, very hard. You have two terms of making a law, and in between there has to be elections of the lower house, and a 2/3 majority is needed in the second term. So our constitution is very firm, and also the powers of the Senate, which is over there, the veto right, yeah, it's very firm and investigated in our written constitution.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Help the answers already satisfy Ms. Ayu and Mr. Hassan. Yeah, Mr. Hassan is one of the students of a master's program of the law faculty. We still have 13 more minutes if there's still any question.
But Isal, if there are no questions, and we discussed it together sometimes, but yeah.
Mr. Nofrizal, can I ask you questions?
Yeah.
Hello?
Maybe Professor Remco can finish first. What did you want to say just now?
No, to elaborate you a little bit about your bicameral system, the House of Representatives, and also the provincial chamber, what it's called, and what are these provisions? And I think they're totally different what we have in the Netherlands. That's not like a Senate we have in the Netherlands.
No,
is it?
Different. Yeah, yeah. Shall I answer it now, or you want to accept the question?
No. Give the floor first to the people who have the question.
Okay, Ali, you can raise your question.
Okay. Goedemorgen, Professor Remco and Mrs. Ilse. I want to ask perhaps two questions. The first one, how do you address on the issue of democratic deficit in the European institutions, especially European Parliament? How do you find, is there national parliament has sufficient participations in policy in the EU level? So I heard that one of the issue when we're talking about, for example, Brexit and any other separation, just like, well, one of the case may be Brexit. One of the issue they raised from UK that the EU institutions has less participations for national politicians. That's the first one. And the second one, how do you see any chance for example, when we're talking about the relation between national parliament and also parliament in the international organizations such as EU, do you see any chance for any other, for example, regional organizations to adopt this kind of institutional structure between parliament in the regional organization level and also for the national level? And what are, do you think, lesson learned that we could draw from your experience in the Netherlands and in the EU? Thank you very much.
Well, Isal, I have to be very careful because my neighbor and colleague, of course, Ilse van der Driessen, will taking care of that questions, of course. A little bit oversight or not in depth. There's a lot of discussion between, and also certain national political parties in the Netherlands are very negative on to being a part of the European Union. The majority isn't, but there are also voices in the Netherlands, and also a large group of the minority is saying we should also have a Brexit, an exit it's called here in the papers. The strange thing is what a lot of people do not know, but Brexit all started not on the European Union, but on the Council of Europe. And a lot of students of which I teach in former times do not know the difference between the Council of Europe, although it's also a part of the European Union, but it's also a unique and a little bit older organization in Europe. It's called the Council of Europe, seated in Strasbourg. It was erected in 1949. And it was there for protecting the rule of law, especially democracy and the rule of law. After the Second World War, especially Winston Churchill was calling Europe should unite, and then also by Council of Europe. And it was erected here in the Hague, was a very important city for these early years of the Council of Europe. And especially there is a Court of Human Rights. It's also seated in Strasbourg, and there the issue started when the Court of Human Rights, with 47 judges of all those European countries, could overlook also bills of laws in those 47 member states and saying this is not this is contrary to the European Convention of Human Rights. It's very firm. It's a firm treaty, and it has very deepening impact in the 47 countries. Also in Britain, and there you have it, because the European Court of Human Rights made certain decisions which the British people didn't like, and even the British government didn't like. And then they were stating we should step down of the Council of Europe and the European Court of Human Rights. We should do it on our own. It's not up to those strange European people on the continent. It's up to our own. But that fire, this idea was went over to Brussels. And now we have the strange thing that the British are still in the Council of Europe, so the 47 member states or international organization, but they have left the European Union. So, and the people liked it, of course, by referendum, but it was a totally strange and different kind of political debate and also societal debate. So they left an international organization, although they wanted to leave another international organization, which they're still part of. But that's overall a issue. Of course, a lot of people on the rural part of England are very glad they are out of the European Union. I think, but I have to be careful, they can do so because they're the fifth world economy in the world. If the Netherlands should step down by the European Union, I have to be careful, but that's very tricky for the Netherlands, also in the economical part, because we're very much connected to our international neighbors also on the continent. And we were very sad, most of the majority in the Netherlands were saddened that the British were stepping down in Brussels, because they were a close friend in negotiations in Brussels. But Ilse will tell you more about that. It's a very she has taught me as well on that part, and she knows a lot because she's the representative also on our house in Brussels. So she's a lot of time over there, and you will see how what kind of structure has been built between The Hague and Brussels and the Parliament and the European Parliament, and also in between the Dutch government. But that's not my specialty, so Ilse has to take over for that. Maybe that's a nice bridge to get to Ilse.
Yeah, Ali, actually, you should ask the question to Ilse because she will take care of it.
It's a shorter answer.
Yeah.
How about my second question, Professor? About is there any chance for any other regional organizations perhaps to adopt, you know, for example, perhaps ASEAN Parliament, and how do you see how can we draw any lesson learned on your experience between Dutch Parliament and also European Parliament? How about that?
It's also good. Well, it's a unique process, of course, what's happening in what has happened the last decades in Europe. And it all started on the economical part, of course, in the 1950s, especially on the steel industry and the coal industry, and especially, of course, that nations in Europe shouldn't have the resources on their own and should make treaties on steel and coal, etc., not having any war in one country, of course, and especially Germany, who was very good in steel making and also resources like coal. And that was the starting point, of course, the economical part, that the nations were working together. We as a nation, the Netherlands, were one of the first 6 countries who united together with the other 3, there's France, Italy, Germany, and the Benelux, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands started the European Economical Council. And that, it has been established now since the 1950s, and now we have 27 member states. But there's still criticism also in our country. So it was not only Brexit and the British people, but also here, as I told you a few minutes ago, also here in the Netherlands. And you have to be, it's an organical process, but you have to be very careful. It's always very tricky in an international organization. You do not speak the same language, you do not have the same culture. And nevertheless, you see that on certain issues you have to participate and to help each other on certain questions. I think if we do not be a part of the European economical project, things are happening, of course, in the world, and you know that Asia is coming, where you are, Indonesia, India, etc., and Brasilia and South America. There are upcoming industries, China, and we were the old world, for instance, and we have to be very careful if we don't will be left behind. So, of course, a lot of knowledge also here on the European continent. But you have to, it's the one lesson, Ali, take people with you and explain why it's needed and how much growth or wealth, etc., or peace, for instance, it's giving in certain parts of the world. Also, I think in Asia. But take people with you with the story, because if you do not do that, then people will quickly go to their own national or regional institute and society, and it will not help the international process. That is only, but it's very high level advice. But I think there's there's a lot of wisdom in it. You have to take people with you, because there's a discussion now in the Netherlands, in Brussels, on the climate process and the climate change issues. But a lot of people also in the Netherlands are looking to Brussels and saying, well, it's not my kind of pudding, sorry, but go to another. But you have to explain, and also with money and with subsidy, etc. But if you do not have the people with you and behind you, then a project will end very soon.
Well, thank you for your answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Renko. I think, we are running out of time for your session. It's already 1 more minute to 3 o'clock here. And
one interesting question. Can I answer it quickly?
Oh yeah, if you still have time. Yeah.
There's a house negotiation in formation of government and its relationship to the fragmentation of political parties and how to overcome minority government. Yeah, we have 19 fractions now in the second chamber. So in the lower house, there are 19 fractions from the 150 members of parliament. 19 groups. They all have speaking time, etc., etc. In our house, in the Senate, 15 groups. 15, so 19 and 15. In former days, that was 6 or 7 or highly 8 fractions or groups. And a lot of people in society, but also law professors and also certain politicians are stating it's not working anymore, this system. You have to need a majority in both houses, 76 members of the lower house, 38 in the upper house. But there you have it. We have a proportional representation electoral system, and that gives a lot of groups. It's very easy to come into parliament, but you do not have to have that much votes to have a seat in parliament. There's a free mandate also in our constitution. So if you want to have a threshold, for instance, for electoral system, that would be very firm and deeply into the Dutch cultural electoral system and also constitutional system. So as we do not have a conflict rule between both houses, this is also a very big issue now in the Netherlands. Should we have a threshold to diminish the number of political groups in the houses? It works, but on the other hand, you can say, what does one fraction with one seat in one of both houses kind of influence? But they do so by social media, by television, etc., etc. So sometimes one seat can be in the next election 5 or 10 seats even. So it doesn't really fit to have a threshold in the electoral process, but a lot of people are saying, well, it's not working anymore. That's also a very tricky and a good question. I do not have the answer to that. So that's what I was hoping to say to you as a last remark.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Remco Nehmelman, for your lecture and all the answers given to the audiences. Yeah.
Okay. I will leave you now. I will give the floor to my colleague, Ilse van der Vries.
Okay.
And I hope to meet your Speaker of the House in Rome this afternoon. So we will see.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for your time, for your kind willingness to teach at our university, and we hope we can meet again in future sometime.
Okay. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
You too. Have a good morning.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we have come to the second session of our public lecture. Dr. Ilse van den Vries will speak about the relations between the Dutch Parliament and the Parliament of the European Union. Ms. van den Vries, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. And also let me allow me to thank you as well for the very honorable invitation to speak at this Dies Natalis. I will speak about, you've asked me to speak about the relation between the Dutch Parliament or the Eerste Kamer and the European Parliament. And you've also asked me to say a few words about the early warning mechanism for national parliament. Exactly. Yeah. So what I've done is I've taken the liberty to broaden the presentation a little bit more and talk about the role of national parliaments and the EU in a broader sense, and specifically what the role of national parliaments is in the lawmaking of EU legislation. And of course, I'm going to focus on the Senate, on what we do and how we actually proceed in this. And at one point, I will discuss the relation between the Senate or national parliaments and European Parliament. That will be at the end. So allow me to start with a broader topic. Maybe also allow me to say a few words about myself. Mr. Nehmelman has already kindly introduced me as one of his former colleagues. I used to, before I worked for the Senate, I used to do a PhD I did a PhD at University of Groningen, where I did a PhD on political accountability of ministers, and I did that in a comparative way. So I'm very much acquainted with the topic of comparative law, and I'm very much interested in that as well. And I'm happy to say goodbye, Mr. Nehmelman, and I'm happy to learn that you are very much interested in this as well, because you can learn so much about constitutional law from other countries as well. I also taught comparative law at the University of Maastricht, so I'm quite acquainted with it. So before starting, let me just say that I've been working for the Senate for about 10 years now. I started at the Committee of European Affairs as a member of the staff there, and I'm still doing that. I'm also now the principal advisor on European affairs, also for the Secretary General and for the Speaker of the Senate. And as you kindly introduced me as well, I'm also the permanent representative of the Senate to the European Union. I will say something about this function at the end of this presentation. And I'm also a member of the board of IPEX, and IPEX is a platform for the exchange of information on the European activities of parliaments in the EU. I will say a few words about that as well at the end of the presentation. So let me start with the first slide now. Thank you. So I'm going to say something about the role of national parliaments and the role of the Senate, Eerste Kamer, in the European Union. And before doing that, quite frankly, I have to explain a little bit more about the European Union, about its competences, its institutions, and the way that it, what the procedure is for EU legislation. It's quite a complex issue, and it's also very difficult for EU citizens to understand it. So I don't know how much you know about how the EU works, but I think for everyone it's better if we go through the basics first. So as Mr. Nemelman already explained, it's the European Union consists on the one hand you have the flag there of the European Union, and on the other hand you have an image of the members of the European Union, so what we call the member states of the European Union, without the UK. So the 27 members, they used to be 28, but as you already said, we had the Brexit, so we have lost we have lost the UK. So this is the correct slide that I wanted to go to. So let me first explain what the EU is. Mr. Nemelman already said a few words on this. So the European Union is an economic and political union between 27 countries. It's quite a unique structure. It's not comparable to any other regional or international structure that there is at the moment. We call it a sui generis structure. So there are parts are supranational and other parts are intergovernmental. So as Mr. Nemelman already informed you, the whole idea of the European Union started after the Second World War, because politicians wanted that member states were more dependent on each other through economy. To avoid another war. So if you're dependent on other countries, you're less likely to attack another country. And so far it's been very successful in the sense that the Nobel Prize for Peace was awarded to the EU citizens a couple of years ago. So to mark that the fact of the peace process has actually worked. As Mr. Nemelman already said as well, the EU is very much, at least at the beginning, it was very much focused on economic issues. It has broadened ever since, but that was the very basis of the European Union. And in that sense, it's different than the Council of Europe, as Mr. Nemelman already explained, because the Council of Europe was established very much focusing on human rights, on the rule of law and democracy. But European Union is also going towards, has been for quite some time actually, going towards the protection of human rights and democracy and rule of law within the European Union as well. So what is its importance for its citizens? So there's 27 countries. There's about a little less than 500 million citizens within the EU. It has the EU protects the political, social, and economic rights of all these citizens. And I have to say that sometimes citizens do take all these actions by the EU quite for granted, but it does improve their daily lives, in fact. So like I said, the EU, the basis of the EU is an economic basis, and it has established an internal market within the boundaries of the European Union. So all the member states are part of an internal market, and for citizens that actually means that they can sell their goods without any restrictions. They can enjoy consumer rights within the EU. They can live and work within all the member states of the EU, also quite without any restrictions. And I can tell you that I am actually one of those EU citizens that is benefiting from these rules and regulations, because I am not a citizen of the Netherlands. I'm a citizen of Belgium. But I have no problems living and working for the Netherlands, even working for the Dutch government, thanks to the EU. If I collect my pension here in the Netherlands, I can move at the end of my working period and collect my pension and move, for example, to France if I would like to, and live there on my pension. It will be paid to me in France. So there's a lot of benefits for citizens within the EU. And also, like I said, it also intertwines the economies of the member states, which also means that, as you might know, that most of the EU members now have a single currency, which is the euro, which also makes it that member states are more dependent on each other. And that also the EU has also rules for those for Eurozone countries, also rules on the budget of member states. Member states have to abide to rule of law criteria. So it's much more than just rights for citizens. It acts into the life of the structures of the member states quite a bit. And actually the standards that the EU is establishing for within its borders also do have an effect beyond the borders of the EU. So for example, if the EU has food standards for all the food that's coming with it from outside of the EU to the EU, these food standards will be important for countries outside of the EU because they want to export their goods to the EU. Also, data protection, for example, is something that started in the EU and is something that is now globally protected. And to mention another thing, the EU is now thinking about common or universal cables for mobile phones, because an iPhone and Android, they all have different cables, the charging cables. So the EU is thinking about one type of charging cable to address the waste problem of plastic. So that will affect the rest of the world as well, because all these international companies will have to abide to that as well. Yes, and so it does have a huge effect on the lives of people, but I have to admit that the EU is extremely complex. It's very complex for citizens to understand it, and as Mr. Nimmelman already explained, it's you have to take the citizens with you. You have to explain why the EU is there, why it's effective for you, etc., etc. So it's quite difficult to explain it. I have at the very end of my presentation, if there is time, I have a slide also on the conference of the future of Europe, which is something that's very topical at the moment, and that is a conference that brings the EU closer to the citizens and hopes to get input from the citizens on how to further develop the EU. So how citizens would actually like the EU to further develop in the coming decades. So if I have time, I will say a little bit about that as well at the end. So it's very complex for citizens, but it's actually quite complex for politicians as well and for parliamentarians. So yeah, so I thought that maybe it's good to have some basic slides now about how the EU works, what its competences are, etc. So could you please give me the next slide. Yeah, so these are actually all the policy areas where the EU has competences to make legislation and to adopt binding acts for member states and for its citizens. So as you can see, there are a lot of topics here, and there's virtually no policy area where it's which is not directly or indirectly affected by decisions that are taken at the EU level. Moreover, it's so that over the decades, the amount of legislation coming from the EU has increased. And the legislation from the EU, so EU law, actually has a direct effect on its citizens. And moreover, the legislation from the EU is supreme over national law, which means that national law and EU law cannot collide. And if they collide, the EU law has supremacy. If needed, EU law still needs to be implemented sometimes into national legislation. We will get back to that a little further in the slide. But here you have quite a good overview of all the topics that the EU can take legislation on. So if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so does that mean, so there's a lot of policy areas there. So does it mean that the EU will make legislation on all these policy areas and not leave any competences for the member states anymore? No, that's not true. So the EU actually works based on the principle of conferral, which means that the EU can only act if the competence is in the treaty. So if the EU gets the competence to act, it can act. There are several types of categories of competences. I've mentioned here. I'm mentioning here the main, the three main categories because it is interesting also for the role of national parliaments. So you have the exclusive competences of the EU. Those are the competences that the EU gets to make legislation on exclusively. So think about, for example, the euro. The monetary policy for the euro is, of course, something which is an exclusive competence of the EU. If the member states would make legislation on that, you would not have a uniform policy anymore. Another good example, it's not on the slide, but another good example is the customs union. So the union within the internal market and the customs from the outer borders of the EU. So that's also an exclusive competence of the EU. It also has the right to make legislation on what is called shared competences. Shared competences means that both the EU and EU countries are able to legislate and adopt legally binding acts, but the EU countries exercise their own competence where the EU does not exercise it or has not decided to exercise it, and the member states can then exercise their own competences. So that's a shared competence. So it just means that as long as the EU has not made legislation on this, it's actually a competence of the member state to make legislation on it. You can think about internal market rules, agriculture, for example, consumer protection, transport, energy, environment. There are many, many more. And then the last category is the supporting competences, which means that the EU can only intervene to support, coordinate, or complement the actions of EU member state countries. Think about education, for example, think about culture, sport. Those are topics that are still very much national policy areas where the EU can only have a supporting role. I'm not sure if you are aware of, for example, Erasmus, the Erasmus program. Erasmus program is a program that the EU puts a lot of money in it to support students to be able to travel across the EU and across universities and schools within the EU. But the education itself is still very much a national issue. But so the coordination of people coming together is then a supporting competence of the EU. We can go to the next slide. Just go one back. We've gone one slide too far. Oh no, we're going. Yes, exactly. That's the slide that I wanted. So, so the exercise of the EU competences is subject to two fundamental principles. And this is also where the national parliaments come in. So not so much for the exclusive competences of the EU, but for the shared competences and the supporting competences. It's two fundamental principles that are very important. First is the principles of proportionality, which means that the content and scope of the EU action may not go beyond what is necessary to achieve the objectives of the treaty. So it means that to achieve its aims, the EU will only take the action that it needs to do for it, and not more. So it cannot go beyond what is needed. And the principle of subsidiarity means that in the area of its non-exclusive competences, the EU may only act, and insofar as the objective of a proposed action cannot be sufficiently achieved by the EU countries, but could be better achieved at the EU level. And the whole idea of this subsidiarity principle is that decisions should be taken closely to the citizens. So if a decision can be taken at a local or regional or national level, the decision should be taken at that level. It's just that if a decision is better taken at the European level, then the European Union can take its decision. So to give an example, for example, when you as an EU citizen take a flight, an airplane flight to another country, which is often to another country because the countries are quite small here, so you're often flying between two EU countries or even more, and your flight is cancelled. Then, according to EU rules, you are able to get either a refund for your for the cost of your flight, or get another option to your flight. So at least you are able to get some refund with cancellation of flights. So that is something that is not. It's quite difficult for member state countries to organize. So this is really something which is transnational, and where the EU is better equipped actually to make a binding legislation, and it has done so. So as I said, this is actually the part where national parliaments come in, because it's the national parliaments that monitor the compliance of the principle of subsidiarity. It's the national parliaments that can say, whenever the EU makes legislation in a certain area, and national parliaments say, wait a minute, this is a topic that should be dealt with at the national level and not the European level, then it has the right to do so. And this is called the ex ante, the early warning mechanism. So that means that any national parliament or any chamber of a parliament, in the case of bicameral parliament, so in our case of the Netherlands, for example, both the Senate and the House have the right and have an equal say in the early warning system. It means that as soon as a proposal is made by the European Union, the national parliaments get about 8 weeks to draft what is called a reasoned opinion, which is an opinion with arguments why the subsidiarity principle is breached according to the national parliament. If about 1/3 of all national parliaments of the member states in the EU send in a reasoned opinion to the EU, this actually triggers the yellow card procedure if more than half of the parliaments send in a reasoned opinion on subsidiarity principle. It's called a yellow card procedure. These procedures are quite difficult in the sense that once the national parliaments have put their complaints forward, the EU will then either maintain the proposal, it can amend it based on the arguments that the national parliaments have given, and it can also withdraw the proposal. And to be quite honest, to this date, the yellow card procedure has been triggered only 3 times. I would say ever since the 1992 treaty. And the orange card procedure, where half of the member states or national parliaments need to send in a reasoned opinion, the threshold has never been reached, actually. So there were 3 procedure, 3 times that a yellow card procedure was triggered. The first time was on the right to strike, which was in 2012, I think. And the European Commission, the EU, actually withdrew that proposal, although it did not. I'm still at the previous slide, but although it did not. It did say that it wasn't on the basis of the subsidiarity breach, it withdrew it, but the European Union did withdraw the proposal. The second one was on the European Public Prosecutor's Office. And there the European Union decided to maintain the proposal, arguing that the whole proposal was actually in line with the subsidiarity principle. So it did go just forward with the principle, and the European Public Prosecutor's Office is established. And the last one was a directive on posting of workers, and posting of workers are workers that are working in another country. And there the yellow card procedure was triggered, but the EU dismissed the arguments of the national parliaments, saying that this topic is in itself a transnational topic, which is, in my opinion, correct. It was actually based on a previous directive, and this directive had been changed, and only because of the change, a lot of parliaments said, well, okay, this is a breach of subsidiarity, but it's actually a transnational topic if you have workers working in another country. So I do have to say at this point that not many reasoned opinions are being sent on the basis of the subsidiarity breach. I think from a point of view of the Senate, about 1 to 4 or 5 per year reasoned opinions are sent to the European Union, and so it has only triggered like 3 yellow card procedures. But it's also very difficult for national parliaments to actually get to the threshold, because 1/3 of national or of chambers, it's quite a high number, and the yellow and the orange card procedures even a higher number. So let me just, and let's go to the next slide now. Let me just explain a little bit more about the EU and legislation. So like I said, it's quite complex, and this is actually quite a basic explanation. So the heart of the decision making in the EU is with these four. There are more institutions, but these four, I would say, are at the heart of the decision making. So the European Council, and this is actually what I wanted to say. So I've forgotten his name, Mr. Ali Abdillah. He was called. Asked a question about the fact that national parliamentarians are not so much part of the decision making in the EU, and that's actually not true. And this slide would it shows that, because the European Council is the council that brings together all the national and EU level leaders together, and they set the EU broad priorities. So these are actually the leaders of the countries that participate in the European Council. European Council comes together, I think, about 4 times a year, and they set EU broad priorities. The next institution, sorry. Let's go back to the previous slide. Thank you. The next institution is the European Commission, whose members are appointed by national governments, but they actually promote the interests of the EU as a whole. So they don't promote the interests of the member states, but they promote the EU as a whole. But those members are appointed by national governments, and there are 27 member states, so there are 27 European commissioners. The European Parliament is actually, in the sense, also an independent from member states, at least, because it's directly elected. So the members of the European Parliament, MEPs, are directly elected, and they represent the European citizens. So as the national parliaments represent the citizens of the member states, the European Parliament represents the European citizens. And then the last one is the Council of the European Union, where the governments actually defend their own national countries' national interests. So also here you have the ministers of all the countries that come together and defend their national interests. So even there they have quite some say in European policy. So please, next slide. I will go to these a little bit faster, because I want to speak a little bit more about what the role is of the national parliaments, of course. But these three, so the last three, so the European Commission, the Parliament, and the Council, are actually also at the heart of legislation making. And what is necessary to say is here that the European Commission has the right of initiative, and it's the Commission that proposes and enforces, in the end, legislation. And its President Ursula von der Leyen has just recently, a couple of weeks ago, stated her State of the Union, in where she explains what the EU has done the past year, and what it will do, and which legislation will come in the coming year of 2022. So this is actually also the start of a legislative cycle where national parliaments do have some say in it. And on the 19th of October, so in a couple of weeks, the European Commission will start its work program, which is a document in which it states which new legislation will be published in 2022. Yeah, 22. And as you can see, there's a picture there of the current European Commission. And underneath that picture, you see the logo of the European Commission. And this logo actually reflects the building of the European Commission. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the European Parliament, as I said, is directly elected EU body representing the EU citizens. The European Parliament is a co-legislator. It does not have the right of initiative. That's for the European Commission, but it's a co-legislative, and we'll speak about that in a second. So you have the 705 MEPs, members of the European Parliament, sit in the hemicycle. In the picture above, and the logo reflects the hemicycle underneath. So please go to the next slide. The Council of the European Union. Council of the European Union is the voice of the EU member governments, so they cannot say that they're not part of the lawmaking or decision making. It's a co-legislator together with the European Parliament, and it coordinates EU policies. What is interesting is that government ministers from each country are the members of the council, and they sit in the council according to the policy area that is being discussed at that moment. So if you're discussing environmental issues, the Minister of Environmental issues will come together. Who presides this? Each country holds the presidency on a 6-month rotation basis. Slovenia is has a current presidency. The Netherlands had it in 2016. So you have the room where the ministers meet, and below that you have the logo again of the building of the Council of the European Union. The next slide, please. So this is the way that the legislation is actually the procedure for the ordinary legislation. So as I said, European Commission makes a yearly work program, and based on that work program, it publishes its legislation throughout the year. As soon as this legislation is published, this is where the national parliaments come in, and where they have this 8-week period in which they can send a reasoned opinion if they believe that the subsidiarity principle is breached. So if they believe that the legislation should not be taken at the European level, but at the national level, then they can send in their reasoned opinion. Why 8 weeks? Because after these 8 weeks, the negotiations will begin at the level of the Council of the European Union and the level of the European Parliament. So it's the European Parliament and the Council that will adopt the legislation. So as I said before, the Council of the European Union, the members of the Council are actually the ministers of the national governments, which means that as a national parliament, you scrutinize the government and you scrutinize the position of your government in the Council of the European Union. So there you also have a role for the national parliament to be able to influence the legislation as it's passing through the ordinary legislative procedure. As soon as Parliament and the Council adopt the legislation, it has direct effect in the member states. In that sense that sometimes it has to be transposed into national legislation as well, and then it will, you have also some role for national parliaments again to talk about the national legislation that implements those rules. So next slide, please. So the Eerste Kamer, so the Senate, has adopted its working methods for the European legislation procedures. It's actually a document-based system, as Mr. Neemelman already explained. The senators are part-time senators, and most of the actions that they take within the Senate are based on based on the discussions or debates, but are written questions. Because European legislation and national legislation is so much intertwined, those topics, all the EU topics, all are decentralized in I've lost now the presentation, but they are decentralized in the committees of the Senate, and the Committee on European Affairs will have a coordinating role in this. Mr. Nemelman already explained it with national legislation. First it's the House and then the Senate that does the procedure. But in European affairs, we do it at the same time. So as soon as the House can as soon as the House or the Senate and the House will scrutinize European files at the same time. This dualism with the government, and Mr. Nemelman explained it as well. And there is a selective procedure as well, which means that the Senate will select the files that it deems important to discuss. You can go to the next slide, please. Yes. So as I said, the Eerste Kamer, the Senate, will prioritize its files. Why? Because there's about 700 to 900 initiatives coming from the EU. So it's too much, it's too much coming from the EU. So our members are not able to follow everything. So they will prioritize the topics that they find interesting. Once the proposal is published by the European Commission, you have the 8-week period where you can check proportionality and subsidiarity. That doesn't happen that much, in the sense that it's quite a silent procedure. As soon as there is a subsidiarity breach, then there will be a reasoned opinion, and otherwise this is not something that you will see in the procedures. The Senate will more often have a political dialogue with the European Commission, in the sense that it will ask questions to the Commission about the document, the original proposal. It can do that in written. We had a discussion with Mr. Commissioner Reinders a couple of weeks ago, so we can also do it quite often via video. And the thing that is most the Senate actually mostly focuses on is on the scrutiny of the position of the Dutch government in the Council. So that's actually as you saw in one of the previous slides. That's actually the part where you can actually try to influence your government as it's negotiating within the Council on legislation. There's also a role for the Parliament when it implements EU into national legislation. And just to say, there's just one general European policy debate in the Senate, which is once a year on the policy of the Dutch government on the EU. So as you can see already here, the focus of the Senate is not so much on the Parliament, but it's more on the European Commission with what's it called, with the subsidiarity check, and specifically also with the Dutch government for its position in the Council, and not so much the European Parliament. The next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So where does the European Parliament actually comes in? Actually, we do have a lot of interparliamentary conferences together with the European Parliament, and there is specifically there a lot of cooperation with the European Parliament. So we have yearly conferences, half-yearly conferences based on this rotating system of presidency. We have half-yearly conferences of the speakers of national parliaments, of the committees on European affairs, which come together like 4 times a year, on other policy areas like justice, like financial affairs, and like foreign affairs. Those are conferences that come every half year. So you can say that this is actually a network of national parliaments together with the EP, discussing topics that are very important at that time, and exchanging information and also best practices. The European Parliament also organizes its own interparliamentary committee meetings. It's doing so. It has done one on breast cancer, for example, a couple of weeks ago. It's doing an interparliamentary conference on artificial intelligence in a couple of weeks, etc., etc. So when the European Parliament deems these topics very important to discuss with national parliaments, then it will gather one of those interparliamentary conferences. Also at the staff level, there's a lot of interaction with the European Parliament and also among the national parliaments. So as I said, I am one of the representatives. I am the representative for the Eerste Kamer at the European Union. I have an office in the building of the European Parliament, and every couple of weeks all the representatives come together and discuss European files, specifically to discuss what is actually important for the national parliaments and how national parliaments can try to work together on specific files. And then the last thing that I wanted to say is I want to draw your attention also to what's called IPEX. IPEX is a platform a platform on the internet, which is a platform for the exchange of information of all the European activities that national parliaments do. So it's maybe quite interesting for you to see which files European parliaments pick up. What are they doing? There's an agenda, a calendar, also for the interparliamentary conferences. It's actually also a network for national parliaments to come together, but then on the internet. Maybe just to conclude or to summarize, like I said, the EU is quite complex, and it's very complex also for national parliamentarians, and there are some aspects where they can influence European legislation. But I do have to say that the possibilities for them are not that large. So at least for national parliamentarians, the fact that governments do have a bigger say in what is happening in the European Union, but the national parliaments only have that specific route towards their national government. Yeah, and then the next slide, maybe if someone is interested, then I can talk a little bit further about the Conference on the Future of Europe, but maybe I will leave some time also now for questions. Maybe that's better too. And if there's time, I will say something about the Conference on the Future of Europe. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Ilse van den Vriesje, for your lecture. We have got so many new knowledge from your lecture, and I'm sure that the students here who are attending this lecture also have some questions, to ask. Then we still have, actually, we already plan to finish the whole lecture at 4:30 in time. And then it will be, I think, 11 your time. So I still have 42 minutes actually to spend together. Okay, the students and the participants, if you have any question, you can raise your question either in Indonesian language or in English, or you can always type your question in the chat room. Yeah, if there is still no question yet from the students.
I actually raising a hand, Mr.
Okay.
Nafris.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, Ali. Ali is very interested because he's going to go to the Netherlands next year.
Well, that's not the case actually. Okay. But anyhow, thank you very much, Mrs. Ilse, for the very interesting topic. But I just aware that you didn't mention anything about the well, actually the EU has another procedure that involve public widely, as you said, what is it called? A citizen initiative procedure. Correct? If that's correct, correct me if I'm wrong. So when the citizens sign petitions to more than one, I think the threshold is 1 million signatures. So you can the European citizens can propose a new law. That's what I know. But and then the question would be: is there any role from national parliament on that procedure? And what would is that effective? Is there any law that passed through that procedure or not? Because I think it is very interesting one, because when I know it's not really comparable, because the Indonesia is a country and the EU is the regional organization, but in terms of size of the country, we have more than 200 million citizens. EU has perhaps more or less 600 million citizens. We have 1/3 of the EU populations, so it could be interesting if we could learn about this citizens initiative procedure. Could you please share your opinion on that? Thank you very much.
Yes. So first of all, let me thank you for the question. By the way, it's actually a very interesting question, and it's something that I'm not an expert on. So as you said, I didn't mention the Citizens Initiative. Quite frankly, I didn't mention a lot of procedures that could still be discussed, more or less in relation also to national parliaments. But this is something that is actually. Something that is happening, and we do as a national parliament see when a citizens initiative is initiated. We are aware of that, but it is not something which is where the national parliaments have a very specific role in it. It's exactly what it is. It's a citizens initiative. It's an initiative of the citizens. So it would be very difficult for national parliaments and to maybe block it or. But in the end, once legislation is taken on, the national parliament does have again a role specifically towards the Dutch government in the council. What I can also say is that citizens' initiatives is not the only time that the European Commission is taking on legislation based on an initiative of citizens. It actually, whenever it takes on legislation, it will discuss this with citizens and civil society in a broader sense. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's a very good website of the European Union when it comes to new initiatives of the European Commission, where you as a citizen or as a civil society can actually have your say on new proposals that haven't been published yet. So so that is also a way for the European Commission to engage with citizens in the European Union. There's also maybe I'm going too far down, but there's a lot of procedures that I haven't mentioned indeed.
Ilse, if I can give some comments about Ali's question, maybe I can help a little bit about his question, to answer his question. Citizens, European Citizens Initiatives. Please correct me if I'm wrong. European Citizens Initiative. I mean, the European citizens, 1 million, the threshold, 1 million citizens cannot directly write a draft law or a bill, but they have to send their ideas or maybe a draft after they compile it and they formalize it in one document, and then but the right to propose officially a bill is held by the European Commission. So there's nothing to do with national parliaments and the European Parliament. So the right of initiatives of the 1 million European citizens, they have to send their draft or their idea to the European Commission, and officially the European Commission is the only institution who has the right or the competence to send the draft law or the bill to the European Parliament and to the European Council of Ministers. And afterwards, not afterwards, I think at the same time, the European Commission also sent the draft to all parliaments of the European Union. I think, am I right, Ilse?
Yeah, exactly. That is the way. So it doesn't affect the procedures of national parliaments in that sense. But it's true. It's the European Commission that has the right of, and it's the only institution that has the right of initiative, which is quite striking when you think about it, because normally parliaments would also have the right of initiative, but at the European Union level, the European Parliament does not have that right, although it would really want to have that right, I know. So that's also, I think, one of the topics that they would want to propose during this conference on the future of Europe, because there you have all kinds of input from the citizens and also from, could I? No. You have input from the citizens, but also institutions would like to have a say on the future of Europe. And I know that the European Parliament, this is one of the items that they would really like to have, like a right of initiative.
Okay, Ali, have we answered your question?
Yeah. Just curious about that, because I think it is a very democratic procedure.
Yeah.
When we see that we can have a petition and then we can propose a law, I think that's very interesting one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. While waiting for another question, or from our colleagues from the faculty or from the students, any more question?
If there's no more questions, maybe I can go a little bit more into this conference on the future of Europe.
Yeah, actually, I have one question actually, Lisa.
Yeah.
For the exclusive competences, does European Union still need to pass the early warning mechanism for the exclusive competence?
No.
Okay.
No, it does not, because it's because the early warning system, if there's the subsidiarity principle says that, okay, if the topic, if the decision should be taken at the level at local, national level, then the decision should stay there. Only if the European Union can make more effective legislation, then the European Union can act on it. But of course, if this is an exclusive competence of the Union, then the principle doesn't work, because it's already in the treaty that the Union is the only one that can legislate on these topics. So it doesn't. So the early warning system only works for legislation with shared competences or with supporting competence.
Okay, thank you. And you can go on with your.
Shall I go on with the conference on the future of Europe?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I had the last slide on the conference on the future of Europe. You don't have to show it now because it's just a logo, and maybe interesting for you also a link to the website, which is quite interesting. It's a very topical issue at the moment, because the conference has started. I think it was in March or in April of this year, 2021, and the conference is supposed to draft a report in March or April of 2022 under the French presidency. So we have about a year for this conference. And so what it does is it brings together the three big European institutions that I just mentioned. So the European Commission, which started, so this was actually also an idea of Mrs. von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission. So it's the Commission, European Parliament, and the Council that came together, and that are the executive board. So to say that they actually are leading this conference. So they're coming together also with the national parliament, with citizens, and with representatives of civil society in one big conference. And so the whole idea is that there is a sort of bottom-up approach where the citizens can actually have an input, a say on how the European Union should develop towards. So if they believe that a more, especially now, if you think about the whole pandemic, this was also one of the issues that maybe this should be health should be a competence that the European Union can make more legislation on, because it's a transnational issue. So. So a few ideas on how the European Union could further develop, so the EU just really wants the input of the citizens. I think it's also, but probably also my opinion, but I think it's also a kind of way of communicating more with citizens. So if you can discuss the European Union with them, they might also be more interested in how it works and what it does before thinking about how it should go further. So what they did, that's why I put a link in the presentation. They made a multi-digital platform where citizens can actually upload activities that they do surrounding this conference, and also ideas that they want to discuss with other citizens in all the member states of the European Union. And they made this digital platform multilingual, so all the citizens can talk to each other in their own language. That's one of the quite innovative things about this platform. Aside from the multilingual platform, there's also citizens in panels at European level brought together. I think it's about 200 citizens per panel. There are about 4 panels on specific topics. And there's also at the national level, all the member states are also organizing activities on the European Union, as well as the Netherlands is also organizing activities. I don't think they have started yet, but they are planning on organizing activities. And actually, the Minister of Foreign Affairs is discussing these activities next week on the 12th of October with our Committee on European Affairs. So they're discussing what the government will do, which initiatives it will take, and also how it will communicate this whole platform and this whole conference to the citizens, and how they communicate actually what the EU is and how it's and what it is doing at the moment. So there is a lot of topics that this conference would like to discuss. There are topics about the EU democracy, for example, migration, digital transformation, health, economy, the EU in the world, rule of law, security. All these topics that are very important at the moment in the EU. There've been a couple of there's been one plenary session actually before the summer break, and the next plenary session will be in a couple of weeks in Strasbourg. So in the end, it's the 3 institutions are supposed to draft a report with all the input that they got from the citizens and implement it into very concrete steps. So we're not sure yet if that means that the treaties will change, which is quite a big thing to change the treaties. And I know that some of the parliamentarians and also some of the member states would not want a treaty change, but others would like a treaty change, because that might open up the treaty on the union and might change some aspects that they would like to see changed. I know that in the panels for the European panels at the European levels, that citizens have been participating quite eagerly, which is a very good thing. So they are apparently quite invested in the debates that are organized at the European level. So at the moment, I think if you're interested, please check out the website, and please check out the report in March. Quite frankly, the whole conference has started quite slowly, in my opinion, at the moment. So there's a few discussions also on how it's being organized and how it should move forward, etc., etc. There's a lot of discussion also among the institutions, and also the national parliaments are all present in the conference with delegations, and we are trying. This is actually the problem with that national parliaments have the whole time, which is how can we organize ourselves to be one delegation, but also have the possibility to have a say as national parliaments within the delegation. So, so the whole conference has been starting with a whole lot of discussion on the organization of the conference itself, and not so much on the content. So we're actually eagerly awaiting the discussions on the content, and hopefully in March or April we will get a report, and hopefully this will trigger the European Union to move forward and to take some concrete steps based on the input of citizens. So that's what I still wanted to say about the conference. We are participating in the conference through the Committee on European Affairs. So our chair and our vice chair are participating in the delegation. It's a delegation together with the House of Representatives as well. So there are 2 members of the House of Representatives in the delegation of the Dutch Parliament. So yeah, that is what I wanted to say about this conference.
Yeah, Ilse, I'm afraid I missed from your explanation. Are these conferences, can these conferences be followed by public through?
Yes.
So
yes.
They broadcast the conferences online.
Yes. Yes, so this is one of the this is actually quite an interesting topic in the EU, which is transparency of the EU. Transparency is a topic that the Dutch Senate finds very, very important in the EU. But this is a very transparent procedure, actually, because they want to have as many citizens interested in the conference and interested in the European Union as well. So the plenary debates are published on, or you can follow, they're broadcasted, so you can follow them in public. Quite frankly, because of the COVID situation and the COVID measures that had been taken in the EU, especially before the summer also, parliamentarians couldn't travel, or at least the traveling was limited. So the first plenary session was actually a hybrid session, where participants, citizens and parliamentarians and representatives of the institutions, they could either go to Strasbourg, where the European Parliament has a hemicycle as well. So they could either travel to Strasbourg or actually participate via video in a hybrid way. Our delegation participated in a hybrid way, but it's fully broadcasted. Also, you can follow all the panels as well. European panels at the European level. It's all broadcasted, and actually, it's all. You can also follow everything on this multilingual digital platform.
Okay, thank you. And from the audience, is there any more question? Ms. Kurata Ayuni, do you still have any more question regarding the relations between European Parliament and the national parliaments of the member states?
Maybe if because I maybe if there's a question, please do. I can also say something about transparency. That's actually something that is a very important issue for the Senate, and it's quite an important topic in the EU as well. So if you would like, I can explain a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, we still have much time. Okay, please.
Yes. So. So transparency is actually an issue that it still is an issue, but it was an issue for our parliament, for both the House and the Senate, many years ago, because the problem is we are trying to as a Senate, the Senate is trying to scrutinize the position of the government in the Council, and it's trying to scrutinize what the Council does as part of the negotiation procedure on legislation. But the problem was a couple of years ago that the information that we received as Senate and as House from what is happening and how the negotiations are going in the Council, and specifically also with the European Parliament. This information we only received directly from the government, from the Dutch government. So we didn't have the original documents. We only got the appraisal of the Dutch government, and only those documents that the Dutch government would share with our parliament. And at one point, a couple of our members were not. Let's just say we're not very happy with the way that it was going, because they didn't have any idea on how the negotiations were actually going in the council. So they asked the minister at the time. It was a minister on migration, I think, who's a member of the Justice and Home Affairs Council. They asked him for access to documents, and the minister said, well, the Dutch parliament actually is one of the best informed parliaments in the EU, so I'm not providing you access to these documents in the council. So what we did as a Senate was I talked about one of the interparliamentary conferences, COSAC, which is the conference where the committees on European affairs come together and discuss broad issues on European affairs. So what we did was our member asked all the other national parliaments and the representatives there, what is actually the access to information that you have as a national parliament to the documents and to what is happening in the council in a broad sense, and also what all the information that you get from your government. So there's every 6 months there's a questionnaire that is made on specific topics, and this questionnaire specifically was on access to documents. So my member at that time of the Senate asked to add this question to the questionnaire just to see how much information does the Dutch government, the Dutch parliament get, and how much information do other parliaments get. And to our surprise, the Dutch parliament was at the very bottom of the well-informed parliaments. Apparently, a lot of parliaments had access to the actual documents in the council, but the Dutch parliament did not. So with this document, with this list of parliaments where we were quite frankly on number 21 of the 28 at the time, we went back, the Senate went back to the minister and stated, well, this is how uninformed we actually are as a parliament, and we want direct access to the documents in the council. And the minister actually gave the parliamentarians access to what's called the delegates portal, which is a website portal with a password where all documents are stated that are limité. Limité documents are not documents that are secret documents, but the documents that are only spread amongst certain groups of people. So our members now have access to the documents, to the limité documents in the delegates portal, which is the basis of the negotiations in the council, and so they have a better view on what is actually happening in the council. So yeah, transparency is a big thing, and we started as Senate, and the House actually picked it up as well, because there were a lot of parliamentarians in the House who also felt that there was not enough insight of national parliaments to scrutinize their own government. So the House also picked up this initiative, and they started working together with other parliaments as well. So the whole idea of transparency in decision making became bigger, and was one of the topics that was very interesting and very important to national parliaments. And quite frankly, I've been working on this for quite a few years now. And in the beginning, the topic was no one really wanted to have anything to do with the topic, because transparency, sometimes it's better to negotiate if not everything is transparent. I do understand it, but apparently this has been growing, this idea of having have a better view on how the procedure is working, who's negotiating on what, etc., etc. It's been growing in the European Union as well, and so both the House and the Parliament, European Parliament, and the Commission are two institutions that are quite transparent. It's still the Council with the governments that is less transparent, and the reason for that is that they kind of negotiate also with each other on rules of diplomacy rules. So there's it's quite similar as diplomacy, and diplomacy is not as transparent as a parliament actually works. So that is an issue that we're working on. But transparency has become a big topic now, and it's also a topic in this conference as well. So yeah, that's a topic that we've been working for many years at the moment. Actually, the Dutch government, together with the German government and the Danish government, is making a transparency pledge. So I think it's now published as well, to have every document on also in the conference open in the public. So it was a very good question on or if this conference is broadcasted. So it is an issue. It's true.
Yeah, very interesting. So if the transparency is a very growing issue now,
it is.
does it have any impact to the jobs or works of the lobbyists? Because
yeah. That's a very good question. It does impact a lobby, but this is the transparency on how these decisions are made in the procedures. And you have in the EU, you do have rules on registration of lobbyists. So as soon as a commissioner talks to a lobbyist, it should be written down in the registration. So in that sense, even before the legislation is published, you see which parties and which lobbyists, on, for example, sugar lobbyists or tobacco lobbyists or whatever, you see which people have been talking to the European Commission. So that there should be that's actually a transparency issue, transparency thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And I can say that's actually better organized in the European Union than it is in the Netherlands, actually. So yeah, that's of EU rules. Yeah.
Because we don't have that official job as lobbyists here in our country.
No.
Registered lobbyists. Yeah. Please allow me to speak in Indonesian. Ini kalau mahasiswa masih ada yang mau bertanya, silakan boleh berbahasa Indonesia, nanti saya terjemahkan. Karena kita masih lihat masih ada 27 mahasiswa di sini. Jangan ragu-ragu ya. Mumpung masih ada waktu 12 menit. Dan jarang-jarang kita narasumber langsung lembaga negara di sana. Ya, kalau enggak juga bisa di chat, di ruang chat, ada ditulis. Sementara itu saya juga mau kasih pertanyaan sampai saya tunggu ada pertanyaan. Okay, Ilse, while waiting for other questions, maybe because we had more than 40 students, almost 50, but now it's only half, already 26. Maybe they have another class now.
I hope it's not because of the complexity of the story of the presentation.
Some of them they also have another class in the afternoon. But just one last question from me. What do you think? What is your opinion about the issue of deficit democracy? Because I read about this a lot in Europe, especially in the European Union.
Yeah, well, that's also a very interesting question. That's a question that's been Yeah, you can see, you can discuss this question on a few levels. Actually, it's also related to the presentation that I gave and the question that you asked about the relation between the national parliaments and European Parliament, because European Parliament is a directly elected parliament. So that it should mean that they do have democratic legitimacy directly from the European citizens. And I have to say, I've been doing this for about 10 years now. And about 10 years ago, the relation between the national parliaments and European parliaments was quite difficult, because European Parliament saw itself as the only one that had democratic legitimacy in the European Union, and the national parliaments, they wanted to discard the national parliaments a bit on the side. They said, well, okay, you're national parliaments, but don't involve yourselves in European legislation, because we are the parliament for the European legislation. That has changed a lot, because you also see it with the last one of the last slides that I showed. What European Parliament is trying to do is talk to national parliaments as much as they can to actually learn what is happening exactly in the member state, because the national parliaments represent the people, but they also know much more what is happening in the member state countries. So there is this. I think European Parliament understands that. The European Union is too much of a bubble for citizens, too much of a bubble for citizens to understand and to be able to follow. So they do understand that they need the national parliaments as a direct link to the citizens. So it has changed a lot in that sense, that we are working much more together with the European Parliament in that sense, and that is also. I think part of the reason why national parliaments are also able to be part of this conference, because the Conference on the Future of Europe, because you could say that this conference could be a conference between the institutions on the one hand, the EU institutions on the one hand, and the input of the citizens, which is direct input from the citizens. You don't need an extra layer in between that. But the national parliaments did themselves think that it was extremely important that they were part of this conference, because they said, okay, if there is, for example, a treaty change, or if there are developments in the European Union, it will be the national parliaments that will have to implement it again in the member states. So this is so in the sense of legitimacy. It's on the one hand you do have the direct election of the European Parliament, but on the other hand you are missing the direct link with citizens. The European Parliament is also trying to solve that by introducing Spitzenkandidaten and transnational lists. I don't know if you've heard about this, but transnational political lists, where they hope that citizens, when they elect members of the European Parliament, cannot only choose their own nationals to sit in the European Parliament, but would be able to actually elect, for example, in the Netherlands, you would be able to elect someone from Portugal, for example. So that would mean that a politician from Portugal would have to do campaigning throughout the European Union. And there have been, with the last elections, there have been some activities of European parliamentarians like Mr. Verhofstadt and Mr. Weber, who have been campaigning throughout the European Union in hoping actually that they would campaign for the European Union more and to be more visible for citizens from other countries and not just the countries where they came from. So that there is some development in that. And it's also part of the Conference on the Future of Europe, this discussion on transnational lists and Spitzenkandidaten. Those are all topics that that fall under European democracy, and that will come back. That's also the reason why I wanted to mention this this conference, as it's not part of the topic, but it's also very much part of this topic on the relation between national parliaments and the EU. So,
yeah, okay. We have one question here from Mr. Hudson Hutapea, one of the students of the graduate program. He was asking whether, he said that Prime Minister Rutte has won 4 times in the elections. What about the opinion of the people about these conditions? This is about a parliamentary system. There is no limitation to the for the period of the prime minister, right? Just like in the Netherlands, also with prime minister of Margaret Thatcher, also, and now in Germany with Angela Merkel. So, but anyway, you can answer this question about the limitation of the period to be a prime minister.
Yeah, it's quite difficult for me to comment on that. I'm just a civil servant, I'm a member of the staff, so I don't have any political views on this. Of course, Mr. Rutte has been elected again in the last elections in March. So apparently, the people are interested in having him again as part of the government. So yeah, that's all I can say. I can say that Mr. Rutte also has because you mentioned also Angela Merkel. What we do lack at the European Union are visible presidents, so visible politicians that are also part of the European Union. We do have the president of the European Commission, which is Mrs. von der Leyen, who's quite I think visible as a member as a president of the European Union, and you have Charles Michel, who is the president of the European Council. So this is the council of all the national leaders, and he is president also, I think, for 2.5 years, and he's also quite visible. But we are lacking visible national parliamentarians that are visible also for other member states. Mrs. Merkel was one of those. Mr. Macron from the French from France is also one of those politicians that are very visible within the Union. And I think a lot of Europeans also know Mr. Rutte, and I think at one point, at least, there were some rumors, because I don't know, but there were some rumors that it would be interesting if he would actually have quite a big role somewhere in one of the institutions in the Union, because he's been here for quite some time. That's what I wanted to say about this. So
yeah. Okay, just for the closing question, you mentioned about the Spitzenkandidaten. Is that Dutch word or a German word?
A German word. It's a German word.
What's the real meaning, literal meaning of Spitzen, actually?
So it's actually a candidate that is brought forward for the rest of the party as one of the most visible candidates, and is also so it would be one of the candidates that you, for example, would then vote for. And if, for example, because at the European Union, the national parties actually come together that are affiliated with each other, come together in political groups within the European Parliament. So you have the EPP, so the European People's Party, you have the SND, Socialists and Democrats, etc., and you Renew, which are the liberals. So there are quite big bloc. So if you would have a Spitzenkandidat for one of those political groups, that would then be the person that, for example, would lead the European Commission, or would be able to lead the European Commission and form together its the college of the Commission. So it's actually a person that you that is very visible as the person for that political party that you could vote for them.
Okay, thank you very much, Ilse. Now it's already full 29 here in Indonesia. It means 11:29 in the Netherlands, I guess. Yeah,
it's 11:29 exactly.
We have 5 hours gap in time, and yeah, it seems that there's no more question. And then you have spent 2.5 hours with us, more I think, because you already signed in half an hour before. Yeah, thank you very much indeed for this opportunity to have you and Professor Redman to be with us, to share your knowledge, the development of the European Union. And it's for most of us here in Indonesia, of course, it's always very interesting to know more and more about what is happening in another world, another part of the world, especially in Europe. Yeah, the knowledge is very valuable, priceless, worthwhile for all of us here. And I hope you don't get bored. And then we really hope next time maybe we can invite you again to share more knowledge about the Netherlands and Europe. And it's very interesting for me because you are not a Dutch citizen, actually. You are a Belgian, and then you work in the Dutch Parliament. Yeah. Okay. And that's all for today, I think. So many knowledge already we have already got from Professor Nauman and from you in this event. This is actually the first meeting, the first program of the whole programs of the Dies Natalis celebration. So the Department of Constitutional Law take the first part, the first chance of the whole programs. Actually, our Dies Natalis, our anniversary of the Faculty of Law, actually it will be on the 28th of October, actually. But we already start from the beginning of the month. Usually we organize some activities, including scientific activities, academic activities, also non-scientific activities. But now it's a bit limited because of the pandemic. We do it, most of the activities online. So there's no party like in the past. Yeah.
Well, please enjoy the rest of the activities, and of course at the 28th of October for the actual anniversary. And let me thank you again for your very kind invitation towards me and also towards the Secretary General of the Senate to be able to speak to you. It was very enjoyable, and yeah, I hope maybe I see some of your colleagues and some of the students maybe in the Netherlands, and would love to talk to you again. So thank you very much for this invitation.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I'm sorry, I see that you're wearing a batik. Is your little batik from Indonesia?
No,
yeah, it looks
it's not. But I thought it would be very appropriate for this meeting. So.
It looks like batik for us. And I think next year maybe we can invite you to come here physically.
That would be very honorable. Thank you. That would be very honorable.
I read from the newspaper that from the October the 5th, the 14th, we already opened our border for foreign tourists, for foreigners to come to Indonesia, especially to Bali. I heard. Yeah, I read from the news. Yeah.
Yes.
I hope to see you again in the future. Once again, thank you very much. A very high appreciation from all of us from the faculty members and also from the students of the Faculty of Law of Universitas Indonesia. And thank you also to all the audiences, the students, and all the faculty members, the teachers from our faculty. Yeah, have a good afternoon and see you again sometime in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ilse.